Number 5 is analyze. So this is where we take all the signals and intelligence pieces and create patterns and actually develop information that is able to be used by a person making a decision. Where does the deal actually stand? What is the big picture actually telling us about this opportunity? So one of the ways you can use AI for this is by doing pipeline reviews. So I'm going to show you a dashboard that we create through AI that does something like this. It can actually look at the pipeline and review the opportunities and go into all its data and be able to determine if what's realistic and what isn't. Which opportunities are at risk, which ones aren't. Which ones aren't matching up what's being shown in the pipeline with what's actually happening in the history. So the CRM might say proposal, but the evidence AI looks at says, they haven't done proper discovery, there's no economic buyer, they haven't agreed on a next meeting, and pricing's been sent 16 days ago and there's been no engagement since. So the CRM can tell you what someone entered. AI can evaluate and help tell what that evidence actually means. The other thing I love doing is having it do trend analysis. Having one objection is anecdotal. When it happens 37 times, that's now what we call a trend. And AI can help you figure out what the trends are. If you're having the same objection coming up multiple times, that is a great signal that needs to be pushed to marketing to, hey, we need content and messaging about this because 37 people mentioned it in the last 3 months. It can also do trend analysis where it looks at what behaviors correlate with advancement. One of the slides I always used to show when I was talking on just automation was people had done all kinds of studies and figured out which content corresponds with certain steps in the sales process and understanding what type of content you should be sending. Well, now AI can look at and say, all right, so everyone who's in the negotiation stage is downloading this type of content. We thought they should be downloading this. They're actually going here and looking at this. If you have access to a third-party data, which in the United States we still can do it. When I go into Canada, that's no longer a thing, a tool that I have. But I can now go into our third-party partner and have AI find out, hey, are my prospects, are any of them visiting my competitors' sites? Because, yay, cookies, it's awesome. But AI can do that analyzing for me now, and I don't have to, and it gives those trends of what's happening so that we can then go back and talk to our internal stakeholders and say, how do we fix this? What do we do different? What change do we need to make moving forward so that this isn't a thing? Now, one thing I haven't mentioned that I want to make sure that we do talk about is that we need to make sure as we're doing the analyzing and having AI go into all of our data and analyze and come out with pictures of what's actually happening, we need to make sure that the data we're giving them is data that we trust. So we were able to, when I was doing intelligence fusion for the Army, we would get source reports. Our huminters, our human intelligence soldiers would go out and actually meet with people who were sources, and that would give us intel on the enemy. Well, they were all scored. So I could read a report from a source meeting, and they would score on how quality and how qualified that is. If the source is a high quality source or a low quality source. And I could build that into my fusion for my commander and let him know, yes, we got this reporting, but this guy is not very reliable. So we need more supporting content and data before we say, yes, that's a true thing. You need to be able to do the same thing with your AI. You want to keep thinking as you're working across these stages, you keep asking, can we trust what AI is working with? Are we giving them the right information? Do they have knowledge gaps that we need to fill? And for the human, who owns the decision? Who needs to make sure that they're getting this information? If you keep answering and paying attention to those two rules, That's going to keep you from automating on bad assumptions, and it's going to keep the system useful.